What's up, guys? Welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. I'm your host, Caleb. If you want to support me, you can always use that TCGplayer link in the description down below, or as always, just liking, commenting, subscribing, boosting that algorithm will do the trick. Now, let's get into today's Deck Tech with Tom Bombadil. We have a lot of sagas we can abuse with this guy, and there's some really cool interactions we can do involving sagas. For instance, when we put that last lore counter on a saga, there is, some time to react to it before the activation, and then after the activation, it's going to go ahead and destroy the saga as a state-based action. So whenever that third lore counter gets put on a saga, if we react to it and remove that counter, not only will the saga stay there, we will still get the activation of that third saga ability, and then it will trigger again next turn. Now, we won't get the second one, the second chapter, because we didn't put a lore counter on it. We just took one off and it went back to the second counter. So we won't get the second one, so it's not that broken. But hey, getting that third chapter consistently every turn is kind of what we're going to try to do with this deck by removing lore counters. Additionally, we do get some value whenever we get rid of those lore counters. So we can kind of do some funny stuff using cards like Goldberry over here. Not only can we speed up other sagas, we can also slow other sagas down to keep them on the board. And then keeping sagas on the board will make sure we have Tom constantly indestructible and we are constantly triggering his ability every turn, which is what we want to do. And then we're just going to shove a lot of value onto the battlefield and overwhelm our opponents with a bunch of creatures. Now, there are some other ways to win, but hey, on a budget deck, creatures seems like the best and easiest route to take. Usually we will get that Elish Norn on the battlefield, create an instant board state, and then all of our creatures get double strike, we attack for the win. And there's a couple other sagas that go ahead and create a lot of creatures that go wide, and the goal is to just keep going wide and wide, making sure we're protecting our life total while we get our value from our sagas. Our board's gonna look insane. We're gonna need a notepad to keep track of all that's happening, and that's kind of the goal of the deck. So if that sounds like a deck tech you want to get into, let's jump into it. Let's kick it off by talking about how we're going to remove those lore counters and maybe some of the sagas we want to permanently keep onto the battlefield. Hex Parasite is amazing because it's going to let us remove as much as we want, so we can actually just restart a whole saga. Goldberry, a little slow, but she has card advantage and she can speed other sagas up while slowing sagas down. Scholar of New Horizons, this one can be activated consistently every turn, keeping one saga onto the battlefield while also giving you some ramp. I'm going to be honest though, you will probably fail to find at some point in the game. Aminatu. This card does two things in the deck. One, if we exile a saga, it re-enters the battlefield, it's going to reset. And two, if we have a way to shove a saga to its third ability, triggering Tom, we can go ahead and put a saga from our hand on top of our library, effectively cheating exactly what we want into play. Glissa Sunslayer. This one's very flexible. We get card draw, we get a little bit of removal, and also we get the ability to remove up to 3 counters from target permanent. Now, this isn't at instant speed, so it won't do the whole trick of reactivating the last saga again and again and again, but it can reset a saga, which is still very useful. Power Conduit is going to be one of the better ones that will let us remove that last lore counter before it resolves. That way we can do the last lore ability every turn consistently while buffing up Tom, which he is indestructible, so that's going to be a solid route to take. Invasion of Fjord is going to be perfect in this deck. It enters with 4 counters, and it so happens that our commander has 4 power. All we have to do is remove all the non-legendary creatures and hope one of our opponents doesn't have a legendary creature, gift it to that person, attack with Tom. Since he's indestructible, he'll stay on the battlefield, and then boom, we get it, instantly flip this into Marchesa. Now we have a reliable source to go ahead and remove all of our saga counters while drawing us cards, as long as we're going wide enough and creating enough of that token fodder to be blockers. Thrall Parasite is another one that consistently makes sure that we're getting that third lore ability every single turn by removing the counter at instant speed. Now let's talk about some sagas that we want to keep at a certain lore counter to really abuse with these cards. Ascent of the Worthy. This is going to be amazing. We can make Tom take all of our damage that our creatures would take. This will effectively, as long as we have blockers, make us unkillable. And we do have a good amount of ways to not only steal our opponent's creatures in the deck, but also create a lot of tokens for blocking. Let's not forget that this is so good because Tom will be indestructible 90% of the time. Kiora Best's the Sea God. Now, there is a lot of really good options for this. Do you want to create an 8/8 every turn? We can do that. Do you want to keep one opponent just permanently tapped down? We can also do that. That's probably the best option of this card. And then, you can just start gaining control of target permanents, because why not? So this is a very flexible card that we would want to keep at a certain lore counter just to make sure like we're either getting that 8/8 or tapping the token player down, making sure we don't die. It's, like I said, very flexible. In the darkness, bind them. Not only does this give us a lot of chump blockers, but if we can do that last saga ability again and again and again, we're going to constantly be able to use the most impactful creatures on the board to go ahead and deal with our opponents and probably kill them. One ring to rule them all. Now, honestly, guys, there's a lot of sagas and there is a lot of, like I said, little token creators. But honestly, if we just want to destroy all non-legendary creatures every single turn, we can do that. Tom will be unaffected. It'll give us time to build up our valuable board state. And honestly, it will be kind of toxic to deal with, but hey, it's here, so why not use it? I could also see the last ability just, murking some decks out of nowhere. Graveyard decks are going to die to this card very consistently. The Horus Heresy. Now this one's kind of messed up because for each opponent, gain control of up to one target non-legendary creature that player controls for as long as Horus Heresy remains onto the battlefield. So as long as we keep resetting the saga again and again and again, we're going to steal all of our opponent's creatures, and honestly that should win us the game. I can't imagine they don't try to stop this, but if they can't, like I said, uninteracted with, this will win us the game. Not to mention, if we do get low on cards, it wouldn't be that bad to let it go to that second chapter and just draw a ton of cards and send it right back up to the first. Elish Norn. This is one of the ways we can consistently win the game. Not only can her front side go ahead and protect us from token strategies, but once we get her on her saga side, we can go ahead and incubate 2 5 times, and then we can do that consistently, creating a massive board state. Then we just let it go to the second saga, and then they're gonna get +1 and double strike. This will go ahead and end the game, and if it doesn't, we'll go ahead and throw it to that third saga, which we can do on the same turn in a scenario where we have something to either proliferate or something like a Goldberry. We can go ahead and make sure that we not only give everything double strike, but then we board wipe everything and take everybody out with a massive board of Phyrexians. Who would have thought? Moving on to the core of the deck, we have Battle for Bredegard. This is just to create some chump blockers, and then again, it can double up those tokens. I mean, not double up the tokens, but it can create a lot more tokens. So like I said, we're just creating a lot of chump blockers with this one. History of Benalia. Again, we want those chump blockers to protect our life total in the early game. The first Iron Games. This is, again, we're creating chump blockers. We're getting some card advantage because we can throw those counters onto our commander that is indestructible, so it's going to be pretty hard to deal with. And then we do get a gold token after it dies. War of the Last Alliance. This is going to be amazing to find our Elish Norn, or we have a few other impactful legendary cards in the deck. I'll throw some up here so you know what you want to search for. And then creatures you control gain double strike until end of turn. That's going to be really useful, like I said, if we're trying to end the game. Traxos, Scourge of Krug. This one's just solid because it's a 4/4/7/7. This is going to be an amazing blocker and honestly could take some players out in some niche scenarios. Dowsing Shaman. This one's really good for just returning our sagas to our hand. If we can't reset the sagas, the next best thing is letting it die and just returning it to our hand. Eternal Witness can do the exact same thing while again being a chump blocker. Moon Blessed Cleric. This will let us tutor for any of those sagas that we need. Put it on top of our library. This is notable because, like I said, if we can force a saga to its third chapter, we can go ahead and not only tutor for a saga, but we can play it that very same turn. Overwhelming Stampede. This is going to be a solid way to end the game. I know +4/+4 and trample is not the best, which is that is the low end of this card because of Tom being a 4/4, but it is going to be solid in some scenarios to not only take out one player, but maybe 1 or 2 here, and if we can create a big enough board state, it can win us the game. Moving on to the ramp, we kept it fairly simple. We have Jukai Naturalist. This is just going to lower all the cost of our sagas. Gloin, I think that's how you say that. Dwarf Emissary. This guy, whenever you cast a historic spell, you're going to go ahead and create a treasure token, and he can goad something in a pinch, which is going to be solid to have a random like 2020 not coming at us. There is a lot of Voltron players, so this can be really good for that. Simic Signet, Selesnya Signet, Golgari Signet. If you're noticing, I just shoved every Signet in the deck that has green in it. That way we can access our ramp cards such as Kodama's Reach and Cultivate. Farseek and Nature's Lore are also going to be super solid. We do have some dual lands, not dual lands, you know what I mean, but lands with dual typings that we can fetch up with Nature's Lore and Farseek. That way we are getting some solid color fixing. Soul Ring also makes an appearance, surprise, surprise. There and back again, it's going to be amazing. Like I said, for the mountain aspect of this card, we do have options to go ahead and get some of those multicolor lands, and then we do get a 6/6 that when it dies, we get 14 treasure tokens. I can't imagine anybody killing it, but hey, that's a free 6/6 we can just keep smashing face with, and we can keep resetting this saga to go ahead and get multiple 6/6s, but honestly that's pretty slow, but I still like it. Forging the Tyrant Sword. Now there's not really anything we can do with that last ability, but resetting this every turn just to create a treasure token is going to be solid, and it will be consistent ramp. Moving on to card advantage, we have Joyra Weatherlight Captain. This is going to be another solid card to pick up with the saga that tutors for a legendary for sure. Sithis, another legendary that we could tutor up with that. It does trigger twice. Citizen Champion, Satyr Enchanter, and Eidolon of Blossoms are going to be solid card advantage just because of the sheer amount of sagas we'll be throwing onto the battlefield. The World Spell. This one's extremely useful because when it enters the battlefield, we get to choose where we want to put it. So we can instantly get this trigger off of Tom and then throw it to that third chapter and throw 2 permanents onto the battlefield because that's fair magic. Song of, Arendelle, I don't know. You go ahead and scry 2, draw 2. It's going to be solid advantage while also creating treasure tokens and some very useful chump blockers. Scroll of Isildur. This is another one that we can keep resetting to just steal everybody's artifacts, but honestly, this can be solid card advantage too, especially when we're tapping creatures and putting stun counters on them, and paired with a lot of our other sagas that tap things, this can get to drawing us a lot of cards on top of people just attacking with their creatures, right? We can use this saga to not only create a lot of chump blockers, but then it will make us the Monarch, and now we have a lot of blockers to go ahead and make sure we keep that Monarch. Jin Kataxis can just draw us our deck in a lot of scenarios, right? It will take multiple turns to do this, obviously, but you go ahead, he enters the battlefield, flip him over, you're going to go ahead and draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand, and then you can just do that consistently since you have no maximum hand size now, just drawing more and more cards. Additionally, he is a solid board wipe, just getting rid of all of those creatures. And then the last ability is honestly game winning. With all of those cards you've been able to draw by resetting this saga, you can just, cast any number of them because why not? Knock yourself out. Birth of the Imperium, another solid saga here. We're going to go ahead and create some tokens. We're going to make people sacrifice some tokens, and then we're just going to draw some cards. Moving on to removal, we have Binding of the Old Gods. Another one that we can just keep resetting, netting us a land and destroying a target permanent. That's going to be pretty solid. Like with Glissa, for instance, we can go ahead and wait for it to destroy a target non-land permanent. We get to search for a land. Notably, it does say forest, so we can grab those dual lands like I was saying. And then we just reset it and rinse and repeat. Fiora's Retribution. This one's going to be amazing because we can just creating more and more angel tokens, and then we can tap those angel tokens to destroy stuff, and then we just reset the saga because we don't want this one to resolve. Hidetsugu Consumes All. Now you do have to be a little careful with this one because honestly it can screw over all the token strategies, but remember, you're also creating a lot of tokens, so make sure you're playing this at the right time, and hopefully we don't cascade into it with Tom's ability. That would really suck, but it will also exile graveyards, which is really important, and then we can flip it over to make a fun little mini game and see if we can take an opponent out with this. Phyrexian Scriptures, another kind of messed up one that we can keep resetting to not only protect one additional creature each time because we're turning them into artifacts. This can also be pretty good with Elishnorn, right? Turning Tom into an artifact. We'll go ahead and protect it from Elishnorn's ability as well, and then we can just keep destroying all non-artifact creatures because that's fair and balanced. The Kami War. This one's going to be another amazing one to keep resetting the counters on. Go figure, right? Getting rid of one of our opponent's non-land permanents every turn is going to be really impactful, especially with that exile clause. Additionally, returning our best, most impactful stuff from our graveyard to our hand, also pretty good. Now, if we do turn it over, we do get a 6/6 flying trampler that returns stuff to our hand, but our opponent gets to choose it, and it's honestly not as good, but hey, in a pinch, it is a 6/6 flample, so why not? Blasphemous Act, Austere Command, Chain Reaction, getting into the simple stuff, right? This is just gonna wipe the board. Beast Within, Generous Gift, getting rid of those permanents. Counterspell can really protect our board state. The Akrone War. This is going to be pretty solid. Not only can we do that thing that we were doing with Horus Heresy to just gain control of all of our opponent's creatures, this one's a lot slower. It will also force our opponents to attack while also being the bane of their existence, destroying all tapped creatures. So it's very flexible and honestly can hose people over very quickly. Now, that's going to do it for the deck tech, guys. Sorry this one took a little longer, but honestly, there's a lot of words on sagas, guys. There's a lot of words. So I wanted to go over it, wanted to make sure you knew why the card was in the deck, so you just weren't head scratching. But anyway, like I said, I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, I hope this helped you in your deck building endeavors, and I will see you in the next one.